Good morning, A Green students. Today we are going to talk about the formation of political parties during the early years of our new republic. So you probably hear a lot about political parties today, mostly the Democrats versus the Republicans. A political party is a group of organized people that have similar political beliefs or ideas. They have if you're within a group, you have a similar idea as others within that group of how you want the country to be ran, how you want the government to be impacting the nation. And so each political party tries to influence government policy, whether that's through getting other candidates elected, getting people with your similar political beliefs on the different court systems, especially the federal courts. Political parties participate in campaigns and educational outreach and protest, peaceful protest and assembly actions as well. So political parties have what's called a platform. The platform is their written platform, and then you have your expressed ideology or vision. So you hear the term ideology and platform a lot when talking about political parties. And of course, the two main political parties today are the Democrats and the Republicans, but those were not the first two political parties. The first two political parties, one party was called the Federalists, and the other was called the Democratic Republicans. And so you can see today we have the Democrats and the Republicans. Back then, the Democratic Republicans were one party. And we're going to talk about the beliefs and founders and who supported each party. So when George Washington created his first cabinet, his cabinet had 4 people in it. He had a Secretary of Treasury and a Secretary of War. He had a Secretary of State and an Attorney General. And he picked his cabinet very carefully. He picked what would have been considered back then 2 people who were liberals and 2 people who were conservatives. So in today's terms, this would be more like Joe Biden and the Democrats, and then the conservatives, more like the Bush family, Donald Trump. Those are your conservatives, your Republicans. And this is the Bidens and the Clintons. Okay? Again, there's always a spectrum where everybody falls, but he had 2 liberals in Edmund Randolph and Thomas Jefferson, 2 conservatives in Alexander Hamilton and Henry Knox. And he did this on purpose because he wanted multiple viewpoints, to help him out as he was running the country. What he did not foresee is the formation of political parties. So at the time when Washington took office, there were no political parties. Okay, Washington is the only president to not be officially affiliated with a political party. All right, so let's look at the Federalists. So the Federalists were founded and ran by Alexander Hamilton. John Adams was also one of their leaders, and Henry Knox as well. So he had a Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of War, and his Vice President were Federalists. Gouverneur Morris, you know him. He was the guy who hand-wrote the final draft of the Constitution and the preamble. Now, I placed George Washington right here on your note sheet as you're filling in the notes. I would have George Washington kind of straddled between the 2 boxes, because technically he's not a part of this party. But I had to put him in somewhere, and a lot of his viewpoints leaned this way. But as you're filling in your notes, I would straddle him, really. And I would mark this down here, make sure you know that he's not part of either party. Democratic Republicans, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison were the main leaders. Edmund Randolph, Aaron Burr, this is a name that we're going to talk about, that we will talk about moving forward. Those of you that know the Hamilton story, you know who Aaron Burr is. So the supporters of each party. For the Federalist side, you had most of their supporters were in the Northeast, or what you think of as the New England area. These are your businessmen, your trade merchants, property owners, your wealthy, well-educated, kind of your elite. The Democratic Republicans, people living in the South and Western frontier, your farmers, skilled men with little or no property, immigrants, common folk. Okay, so you kind of have your elites versus your common man, if you will. The Federalists believed in what's called a loose construction. Okay, there's a clause called the Necessary and Proper Clause, also called the Elastic Clause, and the Federalists basically used that Elastic Clause to kind of stretch the powers of the Constitution, if you will. That's what's called the Elastic Clause, and so they were not as strict as, kind of word by word following the Constitution, whereas the Democratic Republicans were what we call strict constructionists. If it's not in the Constitution, you cannot do it. Okay, so the National Bank is the big one of the time period. The Federalists wanted to create this new national bank, and they felt it was necessary and proper, whereas the Democratic Republicans were saying, hey, the Constitution says nothing about creating a federal bank. So on your note sheet, I'm going to go ahead and put all these up here because I like to go back and forth. So these are basically contradicting viewpoints. So for the Federalists, they believed in federal and state taxes. Democratic Republicans believed that taxes should only be levied at the state level. Federalists believed in a protective tariff on foreign imports. This is going to put an extra tax on foreign imports, which is going to raise the price of foreign products, which would encourage people to buy American. The Democratic Republicans believed in free trade, no import tariffs. They believed that if you don't tax foreign competitors, that's going to force American manufacturers to make a better product. If everything's being equal, people are going to buy the better product. The Federalists believe that we should be loyal to Great Britain. I know that sounds strange because we just declared independence from them, but 75% of our national trade was with Great Britain. And so to the Federalists, who are all about kind of the economics of things, especially Hamilton, it was important to stay on good terms with them. The Democratic Republicans believed that we should align ourselves with France. They were our ally during the Revolution and really is the reason why we have our independence. As far as getting involved in global issues, the Federalists believed it was more important to kind of isolate ourselves and remain neutral and just stay out of other people's business. The Democratic Republicans believed in a push for world democracy. They believed that it was important to help other nations get rid of their tyrannical leaders. And if that meant the Americans needed to step in and help, then that's what they should do. And then ultimately, the Federalists believed in a stronger federal government with more subordinate, weaker states. The Democratic Republicans believed in a limited federal government with stronger states. Not quite a confederation like we had in the Articles of Confederation, but a little bit more of a limited government compared to what the Federalists believed in. Now at the bottom of your chart, you have a little space at the bottom of your chart where you're taking notes. Both political parties are made up of loyal Americans. Okay, Jefferson and Hamilton both were loyal to America. Jefferson and Hamilton both wanted to make America stronger and more successful. Hamilton just believed in industry and Jefferson in agriculture. Both were trying to improve America's representative government, this new republic that we had. They just had different ideas about what that looked like. So here's a cool little graphic. You've got Hamilton on the left, again, stronger national government, economic policies support the British, focus on merchants and industry, manufacturing. Jefferson, meanwhile, was about stronger state governments, limit the federal government's involvement in economics, support the French, focus more on farming and producing and trading. A lot of your plantation owners from the rural areas and the frontier were Democratic Republicans. All right, I know I went kind of fast through that, so if you need to go back to your notes and push pause at any point, feel free to do so. Have a great day.